That's not a luxury, though. Coffee and socks are not a luxury.
All right, give me a luxury. What luxury should I have?
Private plane.
Larry, I'm on DuckTales.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Josh, but my stage name is YhA, and I play in the band Suffering Hour.
And how would you describe the music of Suffering Hour?
I don't know. I've been listening to extreme metal for a really long time, and every time I would hear a band, even if I really liked them, there's always that little voice in my head saying, like, but if they had this, that would be cool. And I don't know, this is basic. Suffering Hour is basically just a summation of all the extreme metal that I listen to, like just being done the way I would do it, like regardless of subgenre, I guess. is the best way I could think to describe it.
Fair to say that you draw from a lot of death and black metal bands, but you guys have a lot of dissonance to your riffs.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that just comes from, I don't know, I just like chords. I've always been a chordy guy. I listened to a lot of like progressive and jazz and stuff when I was in high school, and it kind of leaks in, I guess.
And we should also point out that Suffering Hour is a trio.
Yeah, it's just me on guitar, and then DGS or Dylan on bass and vocals, and ISN Jason on drums. It's just three of us.
And where are you guys based?
We're based in a small little middle of the woods town in Minnesota called Forest Lake. We're maybe like close to an hour outside of Minneapolis, Paul, kind of in the middle of nowhere.
What led to you guys getting together originally?
So the drummer, Jason, and I, we've known each other since we were like 11 years old. We've been drumming in bands for a really long time. And I was in this thrash band. It was me and this buddy of mine. And there came a point where we wanted to start playing live, and we needed a drummer. So I was like, hey, my buddy plays drums. And the other guy was like, I met this guy who's into good stuff and he plays bass. And then that was Dylan. So then he came over and the four of us hung out. Oh, excuse me. And then like not long, like maybe a couple weeks after that, that other guy quit. So from 2011 on, it was just me, Dylan, Jay. And we have, we get along really well. We're like best friends and we play really well together. So we just kept going with it. And we were a thrash band for a few years, and then we kind of just dropped an EP as a way of kind of saying like, hey, we released everything we've wanted to release as a thrash band, and then we moved on to where we are now.
So the thrash band that you're referring to was called Compassion Dies.
Yes.
What led to you dropping that name and becoming Suffering Hour and taking on the style that you guys play now?
Oh, that's easy. It was a bad name. It was, so before the stuff that you hear under the Compassion Dies name came out, it was me and that other guy's a studio project, and it was a lot more, I don't know, put it was a really neat, kind of like progressive, but kind of like gothic progressive thrash. I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Fear of God. They're a really big influence on us. They're actually like a gothic thrash band, and we just thought it was such a cool concept. So we kind of did stuff like that, but with some progressive elements. So the name made sense then. But then when it was me and Dylan J, it was a lot more kind of death thrashy and a lot more savage. And so, yeah, the name just didn't make sense. And the name Passion Dies came from an Anacrusis lyric from the song Wrong. And when we were renaming the band, we were still a thrash band. And I thought it'd be cool to keep the Anacrusis nod there still. So we named ourselves Suffering Hour after the Anacrusis record because, yeah, they're just an amazing fucking band.
So would you say the transition from the earlier, more progressive gothic thrash sound to the more discordant style that you guys have now was a natural progression? Or were you guys looking to change your sound intentionally?
It was a little bit of both. Because, I mean, if you listen to like the Suffering Hour EP, especially like the second to last song, there's a lot of dissonant stuff on there and a lot more black and death metal edge to it. And there were, at that point in time, too, we were starting to listen to more and more of that stuff, and we just kind of felt that it just, especially considering our lyrical themes and things like that, it just kind of started going that way on its own. But then when it came time to do a full length, we kind of made the decision, like, let's just maybe drop the thrash for now so we can make it darker. So it wasn't so much like we're no longer a thrash band, we're now a death metal band. It was more so like, let's just kind of amp up the darkness, tone down the kind of tight proggy riffing stuff, and try to create more atmosphere. Yeah, and In Passing Ascension was the result of that.
How old were you guys when you first formed Compassion Dies?
I was 14. I was 14, I think. But by the time it was me, Dylan, Jay was 14, I was 16, and Dill was 17. And then we gigged until I was 18, and I moved to Colorado when I was 18. And then it wasn't too long after that when we started working on In Passing. So yeah, we were little high school kids when we were doing the thrash stuff, and then we moved on to the darker stuff once we were out of high school, more or less.
So it's fair to say that from when you first formed Compassion Dies to when you officially became Suffering Hour, you guys had grown as musicians and discovered a lot more music.
Oh yeah, I mean,
considering how young you were.
Yeah, I mean, we were kids, so it's like we thought we knew what we wanted to do, but we barely scratched the surface. And we're at a point now where, once you kind of get into the underground black death metal scene, you get into it and you get the gist of it. So it's like we kind of, we know what's going on in the underground, and we know, that what we're doing is what we want to do, if that makes sense.
So you mentioned your first album, In Passing Ascension. That was released by Blood Harvest in 2017. How long had you guys been working on those songs before it came out?
I started writing those songs in 2014. January of 2014 is when I started working on that record. And then I finished writing it by like December of 2014. It took me a solid year to write that album. And then the three of us are just lazy and slow. So then maybe 7 or 8 months after that, we tracked drums. And then 4 months after that, I tracked my guitar parts. And so that by the time it finally came out, it was 2.5 years away from when I started writing it. It was kind of a mess, but I don't know. When we take our time, stuff usually comes out better anyway. So we didn't want to rush it, especially since it was our debut record. We wanted to make sure it came out, spotless, instead of rushing it out just to get it out.
Now, was the style on that album more or less the style that you guys were aiming for when you first became Suffering Hour?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, when I listen back now, I hear stuff I would have done different and things, but I mean, I wrote that when I was, 18 or 19 years old, and I'm in my mid-20s now. So, obviously there's things that I would have done different, but looking back as a debut record, overall, I don't think there's anything I would change. That created the base of what we're going to build everything else we do off of. That's our sound. So we're going to probably change and evolve as we go, but that'll always serve as our base for what we build off of.
How did you guys end up getting signed to Blood Harvest?
Oh, we sent an email and he wrote back. It was pretty straightforward. We just, did what every other label does, where you just get all, the promo emails and just spam out a bunch of emails. And yeah, Blood Harvest is one of very few labels that actually wrote back saying they're interested.
Were you familiar with the label and the bands that were on the label?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that was around when Two Mold put out their debut and things like that. So there are some bands on there. They did some stuff for Impiety. So yeah, there are bands on there that I knew, and they seemed like a cool label. Even the stuff I didn't know, I was listening to it and being like, oh, okay, so he signed some good stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It felt right. Some of the emails that we sent out to labels, it was this label probably isn't the best, but we'll take it if we can get it. But with them, it felt like that they would have understood what we were doing. And then they did, and it worked out pretty well. So yeah, they seemed like a solid label.
So how many releases did you end up putting out through Blood Harvest?
We did In Passing and we did Dwell. And now we're on Profound Lore with the new one. So just 2.
Let's talk about Dwell. Dwell was an EP that you put out in 2019, which consists of one long, I believe, 17-minute song.
I think it's 18 and a half. I don't remember, though. You're asking the wrong guy.
Well, tell me about how that song came together.
So, yeah, with In Passing, it was I felt like we got our sound down, but we knew that we wanted to keep pushing the envelope and letting our sound evolve as time went on. But I kind of felt I wanted to do one more thing in that sound we had. I wanted to do something that really pushed me as a songwriter instead of just putting out an EP of a few songs in just the same vein. It was what if I just figured out a way to write one close to 20-minute long song and have it flow and have it have structure and have it, not feel like a 20-minute song by the time you're done listening to it. So that song for me was kind of, yeah, it was more or less just kind of me putting my songwriting ability to the test, I guess. It wasn't, and we did a lot of thrashier stuff on that too, because we still love thrash, and I wanted to see if there was a way to kind of be able to keep throwing some thrash elements here and there, without it feeling, I can't think of the word, like stuttery, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like Black Death and then boom, it's thrash and then it goes back. Like, I wanted to see if I can make it flow with, ideas from styles that aren't really considered that gel with what we play. So yeah, it was more or less just me seeing if I could write a long song and make it good. I guess that's the best way I could put it.
I mean, a one-song EP, an 18-minute song, it sounds like you guys still have a pretty progressive mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way we do things is that, because people like to call us progressive and technical or whatever, it's less that we're trying to be progressive and technical. It's just that we're very, like, I don't know, we know what we want to do, and we know that maybe what we want to do isn't what everybody else wants to do, and we're just going to do it anyway just to see how it goes. We'd rather, try new things, and if it bombs, it bombs. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's like we just try to, everything we do, we just try to keep our minds as open as we can and just see how it goes, instead of, going into everything thinking about this song has to be this long and this song has to be that long. And, if we want people to dig this, we have to write the songs like this. We just do our best to make it our own and to try and keep outside noise out while we do what we do.
So on February 19th of 2021, you'll be releasing your second album, which is called, is it The Cyclic Reckoning?
Cyclic. I don't know how to say it. You can say it however you want.
Let's go with cyclic.
Yeah, I think that's how Dill
that
says
sounds
it.
sicker.
So if Dill says cyclic, I'm going to assume it's cyclic.
Tell me how this album came together.
Well, after Dwell, we kind of realized that we figured out what we sound like. Like we know what makes us tick. So we were like, so what do we do with this next record? Do we start, going off the rails now? And I don't know, we just kind of thought about it and it's like, we should just do something honest. Like we should just try and not push it to be too angry or anything. Because like all three of us at that point, I think we were going through some stuff, in our personal lives on our own. So we were all in a pretty somber state of mind. So we just kind of let that dictate how it went. And so, yeah, it's a lot less, I guess like staccato-y, techy type stuff. There's a lot more vibe. It's a little slower. It flows a little more. It's less, it's less angular and it's a little more emotional and heartfelt, for lack of a better term, I guess. So yeah, it was just us kind of trying to channel some more like, different kinds of negative emotion into what we do instead of it just being full on angry like our stuff was for the most part up until now.
What do you mean when you say you discussed within the band about whether or not you were going to go off the rails?
Oh, well, chances are as we go on, we're probably going to end up messing with a lot more and more crazy stuff. And it's something that we kind of knew early on. And like I was saying that with our first record, we kind of wanted it to be the base of our sound. So then whenever we do crazy stuff, we can keep it, within the realm of what our sound is without it, going so off the rails that we're like a completely different band. So yeah, it was just a matter of like, we were just kind of talking like, do we want to start, getting crazy now, or is it too soon? And we felt like it was a little too soon. So we just kind of tried to do something the opposite direction, almost like make it a little more safer and make it something that just like felt right instead of trying to start to go even more crazy yet. It just doesn't feel like it's time yet for us to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious,
Okay.
What form would going off the rails take for you guys? Would it mean bringing in other instrumentation, other forms of music?
I don't really know. I mean, probably both of those things, because I know, especially Jay, our drummer, has been talking about trying a lot of, kind of weird ethnic percussion on future stuff. And, and we've been talking about maybe doing some more like off-kilter rhythmic type stuff, like maybe, not like to the Meshuggah level, but just, some stuff that just make it feel more unpredictable. And yeah, and maybe bring in some other genres of music. Like I don't really listen to a lot of metal anymore. I listen to primarily like kind of like folk and singer-songwriter type stuff, I guess. My favorite band is this band Woven Hand, which is like this psychedelic kind of neo folk type band, at least in their early stuff. They're more of like a psych rock band now, but yeah, just kind of bring in more ideas from other places, see if we can make them work, instead of, because we don't want to just like, we like this band, let's do this riff here. You know what I mean? Like, we want to try and figure out ways to make it work and make it flow. But yeah, I mean, we don't want to get stale, because if I kept writing the same songs over and over again, it would get stale for me. And so we want to keep evolving, and we just want to keep trying to find more things we like to do as a band and see where it takes us.
Now, typically, how do your songs come together? Do you guys write as a band, or do you bring in pieces of music to the band and you guys work out the arrangements yourselves afterwards?
So as of now, just because I live in Colorado right now, the way we do it is I write all the music myself, and then I send, not the lyrics or the vocals or anything, that's all, Dill does all that. And then I send the demo songs to them, and on In Passing, they just kind of played the parts I wrote for them. On Dwell, they mixed up a little bit, but on this new record, Cyclic, they completely just like deleted what I wrote for them and completely rewrote their parts. So, like, you know, early on, I guess they were having trouble into it, but now that they're comfortable with how I do things, now they're just completely taking over their parts, and I'm stoked on it. That's honestly what I'm more excited about than anything with this new album, is the fact that Dylan J really made it their own.
Now, you guys recorded this album yourselves, right?
Yeah, we record everything ourselves, and Dill produces everything we do. Everything we've done, Dill produced. Dill mastered this one too. We've had other people master our stuff in the past, but Dill was just so picky about the way this mix came together that when we tried having other people master it, it just didn't work. So Dill mastered it himself. And yeah, I record my guitars, you know, just at home. I just have a nice set of mics, and I just mic up my amp. And the drums we usually do other places. On In Passing, we actually recorded them in like a really nice church. Like, you ever see like those super nicely like sounding churches with all the paneling and stuff on the walls? Because yeah, Dylan's uncle has a church, and he let us record in his really nice like mega church type of thing. And then Dwell, we just recorded like in our practice space. But on Cyclic, we recorded the drums at like an actual studio, and it made a huge difference tracking them in the studio. We tracked this place, the library in Minneapolis, and it's such a cool studio because there's no sound paneling. It's just bookshelves. It's just books upon books upon books, and they act like sound paneling because, you know, they're all soft cover and stuff, so they absorb everything. It sounded amazing in there. But yeah, aside from the drums, we just record everything at our respective houses, and then Dill, you know, mixes and masters everything just on his iMac. We just try to keep it as DIY again.
So you guys recorded this entire album remotely.
I flew out just for drum tracking. This because I wanted to see what it's like to record in a fancy studio, so that was cool. But yeah, otherwise we do everything remote. Like, the Dill's always there to track the drums because he's either, you know, he's miking them up himself, or he wants to be there just to hear how they sound, so he knows. So, you know, because he's going to be mixing it, so he can, like, you know, say where he wants mics and things like that. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, we just record everything on our own. So everything that we've done, I recorded the guitars in Colorado, and everything else was recorded in Minnesota.
I'm curious if working in your own locations comes with its own set of challenges.
Well, the big challenge is just playing shows, because I have to fly out, and we have to, you know, try and get months worth of practice into a few days. And it's never easy, and our playing is never right where we want it to be as far as, you know, just how we play on stage. But I don't know, aside from that, I mean, even if I were to live in Minnesota, we'd probably still track everything on our own. Like, I'd probably just still record my guitars at my house or whatever. So as far as that stuff goes, I don't think there's really any challenges. I don't think we would do it any different even if I lived within vicinity of those guys.
I mean, I've spoken with a number of DIY artists who record on their own, and it really seems like in this past year, bands who have their own studios or who record in their own practice spaces have a leg up on everyone else, just because they're not as affected by the social distancing rules and things like that.
Yeah, that's true too. There have been a lot of bands that I've been seeing, and they've been posting about, you know, how they've been aching to get studio time. And I'm just at home like, you fucker. You don't need that shit. Just spend a few $100s on some nice mics and you're set. That's all you need. You got your own gear at your house. Just use it. Just mic it up pretty. You'll be fine.
So I'm guessing since you write most of the songs, a Suffering Hour song will typically start with the riff.
Yeah, sometimes it's a riff, sometimes it's just I know what vibe I'm going for, sometimes it's just sometimes too it'll just be me like, okay, I've written enough songs where I use the open note. So I'm just going to start writing a song and I'm not going to use any open notes or stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just, things I notice I haven't done or things I overdo. Like I'll just force myself to dial it back. But for the most part, yeah, sometimes I'll just be doodling and I'll come up with a riff and the song ends up building off the riff. Or sometimes it's just a stream of consciousness thing where I know what I'm going for and I just sit down and just kind of start recording and hope it goes somewhere decent.
I'd like to talk about the guitar tone that you have on this album because it's quite unique. It almost sounds like you're using a harmonizer or something like that.
There are a couple spots where I used a pitch shifter running into this pedal that makes your guitar sound like a church organ. So whenever there are spots where...
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so there's some spots where it sounds like it's an octave up, and I'm running it into this pedal, so it makes the octave up sound like an organ. It was something I didn't know whether or not it was going to work, but it ended up working really well. But yeah, when I tracked that album, I did 6 guitar tracks. I used 3 guitars and 3 amps. I'm never doing that again because it was a pain in the ass, but I really wanted the guitars on this album to just sound super fucked up. So I was like, let's just track a ton of guitars until it sounds like just a wall. Yeah, and it came out sounding exactly how I hoped it would. It sounds nuts.
I mean, I was going to ask if the pitch shifted effect was because you're playing by yourself and so you have to double up the guitar parts yourself.
Well, that was part of it. Part of it too was because some of them I just did for shits and giggles while I was tracking. Like, I can't remember all the specific spots, but there were some spots where I was just figured, what the hell, might as well try it. And then I tracked it and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, part of it is, being a single guitar. The nice thing is that it lets me do whatever the hell I want pretty much. And I can do all my weirdo stretchy chord stuff without having to worry about a second guitar part. But yes, it is a little limiting sometimes, and being able to have pedals to help expand, the sound of what I can do just on my own is helpful.
So as you mentioned, this will be your first album for Profound Lore. Tell me how they got involved with this release.
Well, one of our first big supporters, like a bigger band that was supporting us in the beginning, was this band Artificial Brain, and they're on Profound Lore. And yeah, Artificial Brain, yeah, they're fucking awesome. But I went to... I
know Will's been on the podcast.
Oh yeah, I don't know Will super well, but I'm really friendly with Dan, the guitarist. And I actually went to a Revocation show to meet him back when he was their second guitarist at Revocation. Yeah, and he just asked me, he was like, hey, so are you guys looking for a label? And I was like, yeah, for this second album, we're probably going to look for a label. He was like, let me get you on Profound Lore, man. And then he just pulled out his phone. And he was like, okay, I just wrote the owner of Profound Lore. He's going to send you an email. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, and luckily Chris liked what he heard and he wanted to sign us. And it's been awesome so far. It's a great label. It's a really, really solid label.
And they've got an interesting roster of unique bands where a lot of it is centered on kind of a death and black metal sound, but skewed slightly to an avant sensibility. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I really enjoy the fact that he signed so much, not on that death metal wavelength. You know what I mean? I know that he's not just out here trying to sign boring ass caveman death metal bands because he knows they'll make him money. You know what I mean? You could tell that he signs bands that he genuinely likes, whether or not it makes sense for them to be signed to his label. He has Softkill. That's, for a quote unquote metal label, it's kind of weird to have a band that's kind of a chameleon's worship type of band on his label, but it works. And he makes it work really well because he signs so much different stuff. Because he has what else? Purient too. Isn't Purient on Profound Lore? I think they are. He just all kinds of stuff. He's got noise. He's got post punk, and it's cool because it doesn't seem like it's random. It seems very calculated the way he signs his band still. And yeah, it's something I really enjoy about the way he does his stuff with his label.
So you've mentioned a couple times already that you don't listen to much metal anymore. Is it then a challenge to write in this style?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I listened to nothing but metal for like a decade and a half. Maybe not a decade and a half, decade. I'm not good at math, but but yeah, I mean, I listened to metal for so long that like, and I mean, I still listen to metal here and there, but you know, I listen to metal as much as I do every other genre of music. But it's just one of those things where I've listened to enough to where I know what I want to do with the genre. And I keep my ear open to some stuff. There's some new bands that I love. Like, who was it last year? Jordan Blood put out their second album, and that was amazing. And Swaven. Oh, like just, I like that kind of direction where metal's going. There's a lot of black metal bands, especially kind of bringing on this old school prog rock influence. And I think it's so cool. What was that? Black Death Cult did that too. Although theirs is a lot more like primitive and war metal-y, but you can hear all these weird like King Crimson type of vibes, and that's something in metal right now that I'm really stoked on. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think as a songwriter, you know what you want to do, and whether or not you're keeping up to date with what bands are doing, you still know what you want to do, if that makes sense.
Now, are you interested in making your own music outside the genre?
Yeah, I've been working on stuff for a while. I've been, writing 3/4 of an album and deleting it and starting over probably for like close to 10 years. But it's starting to come together now. I'm going to try and start recording stuff soon. I'm kind of working on like, I don't know if you listen to like Magnolia Electric Company or Songs YhA, like Jason Molina type stuff, but it's kind of stuff like that. It's kind of a little folky, little alternative rock type stuff, but it's kind of slower, more somber. At least that's where I'm at now. It'll probably change in a few months, but yeah, we'll see. I've been trying to write some non-metal stuff, and it's just, it comes hard when you've been writing in the same style for so long. When you try to write something else, it's kind of a chore.
When you say that you delete the stuff that you've recorded, what is it that you're not content with?
I don't know. I just hold myself to impossibly high standards with everything all the time. So I'll write something and I'll listen back and I'll be like, it's good, but it's not, it's not good enough to put my name on. So I don't delete it. I just kind of leave it sit. And then sometimes I'll go back and I'll find spots that I like and I'll revisit them. Or that's the way I write with Suffering Hour too, is I have so many, like I have probably 2 or 3, maybe more albums worth of riffs and songs on my computer for Suffering Hour that I just never used, just because they didn't feel right or they didn't fit with what we were doing at the time. But there are a lot of songs that I work on now where I go back and I bring riffs back and things like that. We're actually, I think it's going to be coming out in the fall. We're doing a split with Malfusion from Ireland. And there's a song on there, and that whole song is more or less just like riffs from songs that I've thrown away. And there are all these riffs that I liked. And I was like, how can I put these all together into a song that works? And I did it. And I was really stoked on it. So yeah, sometimes, you think that you throw out shit and it sucks. And then you go back and you're like, oh, but that part was nice. And yeah, so it's just me holding myself to ridiculously high standards as a songwriter. And whenever I do something that I feel is 9 out of 10, it's not 10 out of 10. So I just get rid of it.
Tell me a little bit more about the split that you have coming out later in the year.
It's not technically announced yet, but Malfusion's been posting about it. So it's like, it's out there. But yeah, it's really not a whole lot I can say right now. We're still working on both of our sides. Like they're recorded, but they're getting mixed and things like that. But yeah, we went on tour with Malfusion in Europe for a few weeks, and yeah, we became really tight with those guys, and we were talking about doing a split, and we just kind of made it happen. And yeah, it's cool because the lyrical themes on it and everything kind of blend together. And yeah, and there's Malfusion's side is incredible. I've heard their side; it's unbelievable. And Dill's mixing their side too, and he's just making it sound massive. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, our side is 2 songs and a cover, which I'm excited about because, you know, we never thought we'd be doing a cover, but I don't want to say what the cover is, but there are some certain circumstances involving the death of a musician that we all really enjoyed a lot, that we felt, you know, we should probably pay tribute to this guy, especially considering that he's someone that not a lot of people know about. So yeah, so we did a cover at the end of our split, and then we did 2 originals. And I think their side is going to be 2 originals. So yeah, it should be good shit. I'm excited for it. I think it's coming out on Invictus from Ireland, which is exciting because they're one of my favorite labels for metal stuff. Like even now, whenever I go on Invictus's Bandcamp and I'll click anything and it's like amazing. They're just an incredible fucking label. So yeah, I'm stoked to be a part of it. Yeah, I'm not sure when we're going to even be able to start like making formal announcements about it, but yeah, you should be seeing stuff sometime this year about the Suffering Hour Malfusion split.
Cool. So I'm actually not familiar with Malfusion. How would you describe their music?
Oh, Malfusion are like, you know what it is? When I first heard Malfusion, I was like, this sounds like caveman music. And then people said, no, this is caveman music. And they sent me these bands that were boring. And I was like, no, that's not caveman music. That's just bad. Bad and caveman aren't the same thing. Malfusion sounds like cavemen, like the first cavemen to like map the stars. That's what Malfusion sounds like. It's just super primal and disgusting and vicious, but it's got this really just smart songwriting style, and the riffs are just they're so ornate, but like in a way where when you're listening to it initially, you're like all you're paying attention to is that it's just savage. They're a lot like Antediluvian. They're like probably the closest I can think of as far as, you know, who to compare Malfusion to. They're a lot like Antediluvian, like adversarial type of stuff. Yeah, they're kind of somewhere between Antediluvian and adversarial, I guess, if you know who those bands are. But yeah, it's just really good, just really savage music, and they're like the best dudes in the world on top of that, and I miss them very much. But yeah, I definitely, like after this interview, I definitely recommend you check out Malfusion because they're incredible. Like if you just want some really nasty, evil death metal, but like that throws stuff at you that you didn't see coming from a mile away, they're what's up. They're amazing.
Cool. We'll check it out. So the Cyclic Reckoning will be out on February 19th of this year. Josh?
Nope.
Tell people how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
If you go to sufferinghour.bandcamp.com, you can pre-order. I think it's still up for pre-order right now on CD and stuff. If you go to Profound Lore's website, I think it's Merch Table. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I know a couple bands that use Merch Table.
Okay, I think it's Merch Table. I think Profound Lore has a Merch Table, and that's where you can buy the color variants. We have 4 color variants on the vinyl, and then they're doing CDs, and then digital. Yeah, CDs and digital you can buy from either going to Profound Lore and clicking the album from there, but if you just go to sufferinghour.bandcamp.com, it'll take you to the same place. And then on there, well, we have merch. We sell all of our merch through Bandcamp, so if you want to buy shirts, copies of old releases, anything like that, you go to sufferinghour.bandcamp.com for that as well.
And if people want to follow the band and get news on this upcoming split that you talked about, what's the best way to find out about that?
Facebook. I don't think we have any other social media sites. We just have a Facebook. So I think it's just facebook.com/sufferinghour. If not, it's going to be /sufferinghourmetal. But I mean, if you look up Suffering Hour on Facebook, it'll be probably the first thing you see on there. So that's the best way to keep up with us.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good. Thank you. That's all I can think of. Thanks for listening. Thank you for interviewing us. And yeah, check it out. It drops on February 19th. Check out Malfusion too, since I went on about that for a while. If you haven't heard Malfusion, check them out.
Righteous. Thanks so much, Josh.
Yeah, no problem, man.